Welcome to Stranger Encounters. I'm Tommy Salmons. Today's guest is a young, fresh, optimistic voice in today's sea of pessimism in politics and economics. His message is one of empowering individuals to solve today's greatest challenges through enterprise, innovation, and voluntary cooperation. He leaves no stone unturned in trying to spread his message and affect change. He's involved in the Libertarian Party politics, podcasting, and vlogging, and speaking to whoever will listen. He started multiple businesses in college, including a gaming store and a concert promotion outfit. He's the founder of Libertarian Wing Media. He has over 2,000 videos on YouTube. He hosts 6 podcasts. Last year, he ran for New York City Comptroller. Prior to that, he was a candidate for U.S. Senate from New York and a candidate for New York City Public Advocate. Alex Merced. Alex, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's been a good day, and it's been a crazy adventure. I got to do all the things that you just listed, and then recently just became the vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee. So it's been a crazy ride these last, and now, I think most all of that's in the last 10, 12 years. So it's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, we were just talking. You're quite a busy guy, and you got your hand in a lot of different things. How do you stay focused doing so much? Do you ever get to the point where you're so distracted by one thing, everything else falls by the wayside, or do you consider yourself pretty organized?
No, I mean, there are times where I've gotten my plate a little too full at times. In that, I've definitely trimmed down a lot of the fat over the last year as far as different projects I've been involved with, and just kind of focusing on a few bigger projects, and just kind of focusing on developing the Libertarian Party more holistically. I do generally am better at focusing and hitting milestones and keeping busy when I have a good amount on my plate, because it's very kinetic, and as long as I have something to channel that momentum into, I'm good. Because what happens to me is I tend to lose momentum if I'm not doing something. So and not every project can always have something for you to do. So sometimes you have to kind of wait for something to happen for a project to move forward. So having multiple projects always gives me something to kind of have my energy focused towards. Because if I don't, then what happens? I might end up starting playing Fallout 4 again, and then suddenly I realize I've lost a couple hundred hours of time that I could have been using for other things. So keeping that momentum is good. But if I have too much on my plate where basically I don't have those gaps at all, then it can become a problem. But I've been better at managing that over the years.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed, and I tend to agree with you on the losing momentum. I write, do creative writing in my spare time, as well as recording these podcasts. But Monday through the first half of Saturday, I have zero time to do anything. I'm driving 11 hours a day. By the time I stop, I want to eat, I want to go to bed, I want to get up, and I have to drink my coffee and do it all over again. And so when I get home on the weekends, I have to strategically schedule myself to be able to fit everything in that I want to fit in. And it's almost like I have to reawaken myself, because it's very easy to wake up on a Saturday or a Sunday and be like, I've been working all week. I don't want to do anything. So I can definitely see how if you're not doing it and you're not scheduling yourself in a very strict manner, day in and day out, then you can easily lose that momentum.
Oh, for sure.
Do you think that when you were in college and you started your businesses in college, do you think that helped you and prepared you for what you're doing today?
Yeah, I had a strange life where I've done a really bizarre variety of things. And it's funny, I'm one of those people, I definitely believe that if you let life just kind of take you where it's going to take you, it'll take you to the places where you need to be for whatever comes down the road. Because a lot of the skills that I've learned in a lot of facets of my life have become useful for what I'm doing now as the vice chair of the Libertarian Party, or just in my activism, or in my job training people on Wall Street. They just spontaneously is like, oh, that thing I learned a long time ago just came in handy. And if I hadn't had these random experiences, I wouldn't have been prepared as much for the situation. So it didn't necessarily make sense at the time, but it makes sense now. And a lot of those experiences that I had were just me just trying to find creative ways to solve problems. So going back to the whole college business thing, there are two main businesses I started when I was in college. One was a concert promotions business. And the reason for that was I was actually in a bad car accident when I was 16. And I was at fault. And what happened was that basically I was kind of not wanting to drive. So when I went to college in Ohio, because I grew up in Connecticut and went to college in Ohio, it was really hard to get anywhere without driving. So if I wanted to see my favorite bands, I couldn't really just drive out to see all the concerts. So I came up with the idea that I would just start promoting concerts to see my favorite bands. So I made a business out of bringing the bands to me. And in order to start that business, a lot of things had to kind of happen first. I got involved with the local radio station. Through the local radio station, I was able to organize a few benefit concerts for the radio station to raise money for the radio station. That gave me credibility with a lot of the local music venues. And then I was able to spin that off into sort of regularly promoting concerts under my own brand, which was called Fashionably Numb Music. So just kind of finding stepping stones to get around the normal way, because oftentimes I've never had the traditional path to do the things I wanted to do available to me. Mm-hmm. I grew up very poor. My mom was a single mother, immigrant from Guatemala. So she had to work really hard to pick us up from sort of, from working 3 minimum wage jobs to keep food on the table to get through college, get herself to a sort of middle class lifestyle. Watching her work so hard kind of showed me that if you want something enough, if you're creative and trying to find ways to make it happen enough, you can make it happen. And I think that also kind of primed me to libertarian ideas, because a lot of what underlies libertarianism is realizing that anything's possible with your own individual effort. And seeing my mom and then actually taking that example and applying it to my own life later made libertarian ideas just seem obvious to me.
Yeah. I also think when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. My dad worked 2 to 3 jobs at any given time, and my mom would go days without eating, and she was working full time as well. And but she always made sure my brother and I ate, and we always had a roof over our head. We always had a good Christmas. They found ways to do these things. Now, a lot of it was done on credit, and they paid credit cards. I want to say I was 25 before they paid off all the debt they had accumulated when I was a kid.
Yep, I can feel that.
And it was just, they were just finding ways to do it. And I think when you grow up in a situation very similar to that, you're almost like every day is a day of survival. And so you have a much higher threshold of what you could tolerate as far as the struggles in life. And you're more assertive when it comes to looking for a door or an opportunity to step through and advance whatever it is you're looking to advance at that moment. Do you see things like in that way, or?
Oh, 100% agree. I believe honestly, some of the most important lessons I've learned through struggling. I've learned definitely a lot from watching other people's examples, and I apologize for the sirens in the background. I live in Brooklyn, New York, where it's kind of always hard to avoid police sirens all over the place.
That's probably the best background music I've ever had on this podcast, so we're going to enjoy it.
Awesome. But a lot of the best lessons I've learned out of necessity. I've learned out of struggle. Of course, I try to learn as much as I can from other people's examples, but a lot of times you just have to make your own mistakes. And that's where I have a lot of issue with, like, a lot of sort of people who want to use government to kind of prevent people from making every mistake in life. Because when you prevent people from making every mistake in life, you also prevent them from learning every lesson in life, which can lead to even worse decisions later on and worse, more systematic issues down the road, because you're botching that learning process. So I appreciate my mistakes. I appreciate my challenges because they made me the person I am, and I wouldn't be it I wouldn't be that person if I didn't struggle the ways I did at times. And I'm very thankful, and I look upon those times with fondly. And nowadays, whenever I do have a challenge, whenever I do struggle, I don't generally feel sad or depressed. I feel like this is a challenge. This is an opportunity to see what I'm made out of, and I treat it that way. And because of that, I feel I've been better off, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's like that saying, necessity is the mother of innovation, and it goes right into the idea of struggle. It brings growth. You know, I mean, if you don't have to step out of your comfort zone to do anything, then you never will.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. And that's the beauty of free markets. It gives you an opportunity for amazing wealth, but even so, it gives you the opportunity to learn from sometimes heavy challenges. And then people always focus on the wealth and the prosperity side of markets, but I think sometimes just as valuable is the struggle and the learning from the struggle.
You've brought up libertarianism a few times, and you and I have, discussed these philosophies on the side, messaging back and forth. Usually, me with some kind of question about, all right, like why look at something in this manner or whatever, or just trying to clarify a view that I understand is logical, but I can't quite put my finger on why it is technically correct. So explain to people who are tired of the politics in life, in everyday life, because there's nothing we do nowadays that isn't politicized. And I don't ever remember it being like this when I was growing up. I'm almost 40, and I just don't remember it being like this growing up, and I could be wrong. But one thing that I see a lot of is people that want to avoid the politics and want to stay away from those conversations, or they're just tired of hearing it. Why should those types of people be interested in libertarianism? What does libertarianism offer the public as far as individually and as a community? Because everybody is worried about one of those things at all times.
Well, I think what libertarianism offers you is an escape from those conversations, in a sense that I totally feel the same way. I'm tired of politics affecting every aspect of my life, of everything being nowadays a matter of, do I have permission from the government to do the things I need to do to survive? Now, in libertarianism, it's trying to get politics out of more and more out of the realms of your life, so that way you can just focus on living your life, focusing on finding the job that you want and not having to worry about whether the government imposed a new license that's going to cause you to have 6 months worth of savings so you can survive and get that license. Whether you can keep more of your paycheck so that way you can survive and not be struggling to go find a second job with everybody else fighting over the few jobs that are left. It's once to get government out of your life, so that way if you want to add a patio to your house, you can just add a patio to your house without having to ask 20 different people permission and file 20 different fees just to get that permission. It's about getting politics out of your life so you don't have to be worried about politics affecting every aspect of your life. Now it does, and that means every election can mean the difference between how your life plays out. And honestly, people are too busy living their lives to be following every politician, every election, and every policy they want to make that's going to control their lives. And libertarians are pushing back against that, and giving people more control of their lives, so that way their focus can be on their lives, on their loved ones, on their communities, instead of having to worry about what everyone everywhere thinks on everything.
Okay, and if you were to sit down with somebody who didn't understand what libertarianism was, all they have heard are the caricatures. Oh, libertarians just want to get high and they hate the poor. They just want to smoke weed and they hate the poor. That's what a libertarian is. They're just about being selfish, or they're only aware of Ayn Rand and objectivism, or this, that, and the other. If you were to sit down and say, these are the main principles of libertarianism, and these are the ways you can apply these principles to your life to see drastic change without involving yourself in politics, how would you go about that discussion?
bottom line is when it comes to any political ideology, there are people who certainly live up to the caricature. So there's people who are literally the embodiments of the caricature of progressivism, conservatism, libertarianism. Those people exist. But by and large, most people believe in what they believe because they think it's going to make the world better and it's going to make their life better. Libertarians believe, okay, that consent matters. That when you get to choose the things that you go in your life, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to make life the life that you want it. And in that process, it's not that you have that opportunity, but you also learn from it. When you make a mistake, you learn from that mistake. When you do something successful, you learn from that success. So the more we take choice out of people's lives, the less we give them the ability to learn. And the less people are able to learn through their own actions, through their own decisions, the worse choices they'll make down the road. The less capable they're going to be to have those successes down life. And it just becomes a systemic cycle where basically people have less decisions in their life, so they make worse decisions somewhere else. So then people say, well, we need government to control people even more. So now people make even less decisions, so the decision making gets even worse. So then people ask for more government, and it becomes this thing until government just controls people completely. Like the example I always use is if you've ever met that person who was like very coddled by their parents, who their parents made sure that everything went right, everything went fine, that they never had to suffer anything, and how sort of difficult they have sort of being on their own, socializing into sort of normal adult challenges. That's essentially what happens when government gets too involved in your life. So to me, a big thing of libertarianism is giving people the ability to learn through their choices. But in general, it's just about giving people control over their realm, control over their property, over their life, over their body. Because if you don't have control, if we don't imply or we don't assume that you own your life, body, and property, then that assumes that somebody else can. And I think that's an assumption that none of us want to make. So it just makes sense to start from there and try to protect people's choices and always err on the side that your choices are your choices, and there has to be a high burden placed on anyone who wants to abridge that instead of the other way around. Where nowadays people assume that you're not free and they expect you to make a clear argument for why you should even be allowed to make a choice, which is, I think, the wrong approach.
So the existence of regulatory burdens on the individual and in personal lives, in my estimation, are the most egregious of all regulatory burdens. Now, we can discuss all kinds of other things, but my personal belief is you really have no business telling people how to live because they do own themselves, like you said. Why do you think there's such a rejection of the responsibility of self-ownership and of self-determination in today's society?
I mean, I think that is an important point because everything builds from there. I mean, most libertarian thought, libertarian approaches, libertarian expressions start from that step of you own yourself. And the further we get away from that, the easier it is to just sort of advocate for control of others. And at the end of the day, I do agree with you that sometimes it's the personal choices and the control of those personal choices that are the most pernicious. Because no matter how bad our economic struggles can be, through our own choices, we can still choose to be happy. We can still make choices that some of my happiest days have been my poorest, and some of my least happiest days have been my least poorest. So at the end of the day, like there's an element beyond your economic life of how happy you can be. So when people control, who you can love, how you can use your time for recreation, etc., you're making people have lower quality of lives, and life is something you only get once, as far as based on what we scientifically can know at the moment. So in that case, why would I want to jeopardize people's opportunity to live that quality of life on their own terms during the time that they get?
Right. It's not that I've never seen the argument that limiting somebody else's choices or potential somehow makes my life better or more rewarding. To me, it's.
Oh, there's people who make that argument.
Oh,
I've definitely seen.
I've heard the argument.
like,
I've just never seen it as legitimate. So.
Oh yeah, no, it's I like just a TED talk that drives me up the wall. Where basically the argument is someone's making that, oh, people will get really frustrated if they have too many choices, so we should limit their choices. Which, like, if I were running a restaurant, I could see a sense of that. Okay, like if your customers get frustrated because your menu is too expansive and they end up not being able to choose what they want to eat for dinner, that's one thing. You can improve your customer experience if they choose to eat at your restaurant by how you design your menu. Having governments sit there and limit how you can invest your money, how you can make certain choices about where you get employed or how you're employed, to me, that's a whole different level of taking that conclusion. But there's people who, there's some academics who seriously take that conclusion that, too many choices is too frustrating for people to advocate for very strong government controls, and it's very, very depressing.
Almost like the idea of submission is freedom.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, we just want to make things easier for you so that way you don't have to, like, think too hard. Like, that's, to me, like, that's how you denigrate society, because if people don't learn to think critically, it's not only that they'll live less quality lives, but they'll be able to improve the lives of others less so, because they won't be able to innovate in the same manner, to think critically, to create new solutions in the same manner, and those things also benefit others. And so you want people to have challenging thought process at times. And sometimes choice gives you that challenge and forces you to learn and to innovate.
Okay, so to these people out there listening, and some of which might be like, I'm staunch Republican and nothing you're saying about libertarianism matters, and some of them may be saying, I'm a staunch Democrat and nothing you say about libertarianism matters to me. How can they apply these objects, these principles in their life in order to better their lives? They may just be listening so they can hear like a small, get a little bit of motivation in the crypto world or in starting their own business or something like that. So how do these principles just apply to them in a day-to-day manner without involving politics?
Bottom line is, regardless of whether people agree with me on the broader libertarian ideas and its political implications, you are in control of your own life. You do have an element of where you can craft the life that you want. So again, regardless of whether you agree with me politically, I encourage everyone to start taking on more projects in their life and trying to optimize those projects, whether it's starting a blog or a podcast, which doesn't really require much upfront cost at all, but it really allows you to kind of learn a lot about marketing, media production, learn a lot of skills that will be useful elsewhere in life, and also can create something that empowers you and empowers your voice. Or just going out in your local community and creating community events and trying to see where you can volunteer. It's these things that will, one, help you build relationships that'll make your life better. It'll help you develop skills and knowledge that will make your life better, and also just be healthy. Again, you have a choice whether you want to eat that burger or that salad. You have a choice whether you want to run that mile or sit on the couch. You have a choice, and you can use that choice to make your life healthier. Because if you're a healthier person, there's going to be more choices down the road as far as what you can do. Okay, if you stay healthy, you have a choice to climb Mount Everest. You may not want to, but you have that choice. But if you don't take care of yourself, you won't have that choice at all. So by learning more, loving more, by building those relationships, by just living your life as best as possible, you're going to improve your life. And then that's all, as a libertarian, that I want people to do. I just want people to go out there and be the best them they can be. I just want them to be free to be the best them they can be. But regardless of how free you are, you'll always have an element of choice that you can improve your own life. And I encourage you to use that to the fullest extent. To go out there, improve your health, knowledge, skills, and your relationships, and live a good life.
So how have you applied the principles of self-ownership into your life, and how has that made a difference in your life?
It's made my life awesome. And I mean, even before I even understood those principles, I was adopting them. Again, from seeing my mom's example of how she took control of her life to the best of her ability in the circumstances she was in, I decided to do the same. And it's allowed me to do several really interesting projects. A lot of times people thought, oh, you're too young. Like when I started a gaming store, people thought I was too young. And then I literally took the money I had to provide myself with like a place to live and pooled it with my friend to start that store. So I was literally homeless starting a comic book store while I was going to college full time. And everyone was like, yeah, are you sure? I mean, you think you're getting a little above your head? We had a line around the store on the first day of business. We made back our money in a couple of months. It was, we took the risk, but I mean, I was studying marketing at the time, and I was really into self-development. I started getting into self-development stuff. Started getting into like Tony Robbins and all that stuff. And again, this is before I'm ever even close to Libertarian. And that just kind of got me trying to apply all these ideas that I was learning into starting that store, and we made it happen. And in that, when I moved to New York, I ended up working marketing in the fashion industry for a little bit before I worked as a broker, which before I started trading people on Wall Street. And now I've been trading people from the highest levels of the top investment banks to high school kids becoming a broker on a daily basis. And again, my background's not in finance. I went to college for popular culture studies. I was studying cultural studies. I was studying like feminist theory, gender theory, all these things, because I was very far to the left at that point. Basically I just kept taking the opportunities that presented themselves. I said, you know what? I'm going to learn. I'm going to take whatever opportunity I can with embracing it fully and build relationships with everyone that I meet. And by taking that control over my life, I've lived a life that I'm very proud of, that if I were to die tomorrow, I feel comfortable that I left behind a good story. And that's all I want for everybody else.
So how did you manage to get from the gender studies and the culture study into marketing? Like, what was it? Just like, I need to do something to earn money, or was it something you were studying on your own in your spare time? How did that?
Well, originally when I went to college, my original intention was to go to school for computer science. I wanted to be a programmer. I was a huge gamer. I really enjoyed playing guitar and singing, so I also wanted to do music on the side. And that's kind of how I got into the marketing thing, because I started promoting the concerts. Eventually, I turned out I wasn't very thrilled with being a full-time programmer. I just didn't like the amount of time that I had to spend by myself debugging code. I kind of need more social interaction in my life. So I ended up changing my major a couple times. And popular culture studies just sounded kind of interesting. And I figured, okay, how can I make this a practical skill set? So I minored in marketing. And I mean, at this point, I went to a vocational technical high school. So I already had a degree, not a degree, but I had a certificate in microcomputer. I learned networking and some programming in my high school years. So I kind of had a fallback plan, worst comes to worst. So I was like, okay, well, let's take a little risk, see how it goes. I don't really understand what I was going to be learning in popular culture studies. So I didn't understand I was going to be learning all this in-depth cultural studies, sociology, anthropology type concepts, which actually turned out to be very useful, especially being a libertarian later on. It helped me take a lot of the concepts of libertarianism and appreciate it in different ways, which I think has helped me communicate a lot better libertarian ideas. Basically, all the things that were happening parallel to my studies, me being part of the radio station, me starting that concert promotions business, just forced me to learn a lot of marketing skills. And social media was starting to become a big thing at the time. MySpace was like the thing, and then Facebook was just starting. It just kind of, I wanted to promote the music I was making. I wanted to promote the concerts that I was organizing. So I just started learning a lot of that stuff and practicing a lot of that stuff for that purpose. And I was taking marketing courses. Then we started the gaming store, and so I just applied the same stuff that I've learned and my experience to that, and at a much higher scale, and learned some new lessons. And that's just kind of how I kept going from there. And I applied a lot of that knowledge and a lot of that experience to what I do now with the Libertarian Party. And then my interest after the 2008 elections, I got so interested in economics and finance, I learned a lot of it. And that's what parlayed me to get into finance like I did. And so it was just kind of a random serendipity of different things happening at the same time.
Just being aware of those doors opening, just one after another.
Yep, just keeping an eye on how everything connects and how everything synergizes, and you'd be surprised how many doors open up. Yeah,
it's quite an interesting story. Excuse me, whenever it comes to your day-to-day life, and you're looking at the way that technology has advanced so much since even the invention of Facebook, like you were just talking about. How do you feel that you utilize technology in day to day in order to assist you in promoting your ideas, promoting yourself in a business sense?
Basically, I always look at social media. Like, a lot of people use social media to just like communicate, say, hey, I had a good day, or here's what I was doing. I always looked at it as a marketing tool, a tool for which to sort of define a message, define a marketing proposition. So basically, almost all my interactions in social media over the years and the way I do everything always was from a perspective from branding from the get-go and developing. And I got really into personal branding. So like in college, what I did once, I did a lot of experiments to kind of see. One experiment I did was I woke up really, really early one day on campus, and I made up these flyers for a fake Alex Merced fan club. No one knew who I was. I was just some guy on campus. I just wanted to see how people would react. So I got up really early, went to every classroom on campus, and posted this flyer. The Alex Merced fan club, yada, yada. And then for the years coming afterwards, everyone just kind of assumed that I was like somebody for something. So people would come up to me like, oh, you're Alex Merced. You know, and that kind of taught me a lot about sort of perception and reality and crafting perception. So that way you can achieve your goals and achieve the credibility you want to be able to get a message across. And I've just kind of applied things like that sense. Just learning how can you position yourself in a way that gives you credibility, that gives you authority. So that way when you say something, it's heard. And just a lot of that sort of communication studies, studying communication, studying marketing, has helped me be able to reach people that sometimes has been harder to reach for libertarians. Because a lot of times, a lot of libertarians aren't necessarily looking at the way they communicate more than they're looking at the substance of their message. So they're not they care more about what they say than how they say it. And oftentimes it may hit on deaf ears. So that, I think, has been sort of some of the most practical stuff I've learned. And I mean, I've always had a knack for communicating as a kid. Even when I was a little kid, my mom would have me write all those holiday cards because I just wrote things that sounded nice.
Yeah.
So that's actually kind of become really useful as far as being able to kind of find ways to touch the heart when you're communicating very, very practical, very important ideas.
Well, that's actually pretty cool. You found yourself just basically doing your own kind of little scientific study to see how, if I were to say there's a fan club about me, like how are people going to perceive this and how is it going to change the way people perceive me going forward? In doing activities like that, I imagine you learn quite a bit about, like you said, branding and marketing and things of that nature. If you had advice to give to somebody who's trying to start a business right now and who's looking at, how do I market this? I don't know anything about marketing. How do I market this? How do I get my name out there? How do I do it without sounding like a total fool or do it without sounding like I'm full of myself? What advice would you give somebody like that?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You can always reframe and reposition yourself. You can always learn from your mistakes. And, there's nothing wrong with trying to figure out what's the best way to demonstrate or communicate the value that you bring to the table. Because you do. Everyone brings value to the table. And oftentimes people get frustrated with their inability to communicate their value. So they just sort of assume narcissism. They assume you're full of yourself. And that's fine. You know what? You are trying to build up your life. You're trying to live the life that you live. So you just got to put yourself out there. You just got to be able to take those risks and learn those lessons. And again, any mistakes you make, you always have the ability to hit the reset button and just start over in a way. You can always reinvent. You can always think of a new way to approach things. So the main thing is just to put yourself out there and just do it and build your brand. But also when you want to build a specific business, you can also think about what the risk level that you want to take is. A lot of people get frustrated and don't start businesses because they imagine if they borrow all this money and they have to take all this risk and they need all this time. The problem is they're imagining the business that they want as where they start instead of imagining what can I start to get to the business that I want. So for example, if you want to be a musician that tours across the country, etc., maybe the first step isn't quitting your job and touring the country, but maybe starting a podcast where you talk about the local music scene, at the same time talk about your music, go out there and play a few shows locally, developing your local audience on your spare time, and then building a subscription model. Okay, so instead of having to worry about like album sales, get a Patreon, and as people enjoy your music and you can start growing on a higher scale, starting to maybe now venture outside of your town, now into your county, and developing some more patrons, so that way you can finance even more time touring, and you build your audience that way. What you dream doesn't have to be built overnight. What you can do is you can think of what's a smaller scale that requires very little upfront cost, very little upfront risk, but offers you a stepping stone for the next step. And if you break it down that way, literally, like, there's really nothing that you can't do, you can't start, if you're just willing to put in the time and realize it's going to be a journey, etc. I mean, I hopefully one day, like, changing the world becomes what I do 24/7, because I got a lot to say and I got a lot I want to do and a lot of people I want to help. But one day at a time. Right now I'm just making the case for these ideas, and if people like what I do, they'll support my efforts how they can. If they don't, well, I'll continue making my case, because it's something I believe in and it's something I want to do. But you take those steps, you identify what you're willing to put in, where you want to get to, and you construct your next step based on that. A lot of times, again, people just imagine like the full-fledged, let's say, business they want to start, like the end goal, and think, okay, that's how you got to start and maintain it that way. Usually you want to build up to it. And if you think about it that way, it's really just a matter of taking steps.
Yeah, I know one thing, like, my wife and I have been working on lately is getting her to a position where she's no longer working for someone else. And so in doing this, instead of saying, okay, quit your job and you better replace your income in the next month so that we don't lose our house, instead of going about it that way, we've decided that, all right, well, what we're going to do is she's found different websites that do training for working from home, and she can do this part-time to start off with, and as she builds up her experience and the income starts growing over the next few months, then she can replace the income she currently makes, and she will therefore have replaced her job. And that's something that is much more available today with the internet and with the technology that we have available to us than it has ever been in the past. And being an entrepreneur is so much easier today than it ever has been in the past. Can you tell us a little bit how that works? As far as the different avenues that are out there.
Okay, but far as developing an online revenue stream and whatnot, or just developing a revenue stream in general, there's a lot of approaches. There's sort of the monthly revenue route, where basically that's where Patreon.com comes in, where you develop a Patreon, you have something that you do, and you set milestones, saying, hey, if I get this many patrons, we're going to shift the scale of this to this. If you give this much per month, you get this reward, and you just try to build a following. And I mean, think about it this way: you build with millions, if not billions, of people in the world. If you can get 1,000 people out there to agree to give you $5 a month, you're doing okay. You're doing very okay, and you can generally support a pretty quality life in most places. I mean, New York City is a little bit more difficult, or LA, but in most places you'll be pretty okay with $5,000 a month, and you'll be able to full-time serve your audience and basically serve your passion. But that's one way. There's also affiliate marketing, where basically you create content, whether it's a podcast, videos, books, or whatever. And what you do is you encourage people to purchase different products that you commission on. And what you do is you find affiliate marketing things that are, one, products you believe in, and two, that are conducive to your audience. And basically your ability to kind of discover what do people who listen to me care about and what would they be willing to buy, gives you one, offers you an income stream, but it also offers you, again, a way for you to finance your efforts and your passion. And again, it doesn't have to be a podcast. It doesn't have to be videos on YouTube. It doesn't have to be a blog. In anything you do, you can document it on Patreon. So like the people who do, they do paintings. Okay, so they're not necessarily doing and they'll market it in two ways. They'll do videos of the process of them painting, so that way people can actually watch the process of them making the art.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it, they'll post a photo of the art, and then they sell the art.
Mm.
But then people become Patreon members because they enjoy watching them produce these videos of them producing what they produce. And also, again, they're able to sell the end art piece and whatnot. So sometimes the content you create can just be you doing what you're doing. So if you're trying to encourage people to finance you canvassing for candidates, just going door to door and videotaping yourself canvassing so people can see what you're doing and people can appreciate that you're doing it, which sometimes gets people more willing to become a patron. But there's the Patreon model, the affiliate marketing model. There's also, of course, you can sell merchandise. Like there's t-shirts. Like I sell t-shirts over there at alexmerced.com. You're not gonna make a living off that. You'll make a few extra bucks here and there. But the thing is that also it's good marketing because people are now wearing something with your logo, with your brand on it, and they're getting your brand out there. So there you kill two birds with one stone. And then just also general like ad revenue on YouTube and whatnot, although they've become a lot more strict about that, so that's not really as much of a business model anymore. So everyone's kind of shifted to the Patreon model, which is probably the best model, at least in my opinion. Just because it's the one that sort of kind of, I think, constantly makes it where there's the most mutual reciprocation between the producer and the consumer. Right. Because you got to constantly be putting something of value, and at the same time, they're constantly rewarding you for producing constant value. And that's, I think, good incentives all around. There's also, you just can sell one-time things. Like there's people who sell like books. They sell products like on Etsy or on eBay or whatnot. Literally anything you can imagine, you can make a business out of. I mean, people can make a business. Like there's people who make a living off doing one-time art pieces. Like people who do like sand art, where they put like different colored sand on the sidewalk. But again, they'll videotape the process of actually doing that art, and they're able to make money off that art, even though it's not something that someone can buy and keep permanently. Right. So there's, if all you gotta do is be creative, like how can I reproduce this in a way that people will want to follow it and keep hearing about what I'm doing. And if I care about what I'm doing, then there's probably other people who care about it like I do. How do I tap into them? They may not be directly interested in what you're doing specifically, but they may care about how you're doing it. So that's where training courses like on udemy.com, which people can sell, also is another revenue stream, or a way to build content to build that audience that might later on become patrons or purchasers of affiliate products. So there's ways anyone can turn anything into a business. Yeah. If they just kind of think of how can they tie that into that.
Right. And I don't know, it was like 5 or 6 years ago, I was thinking about how to put up a website and put it behind a paywall and this, that, and the other. And I didn't have the additional income to invest in what I wanted to do, so it never came to fruition. But nowadays, with things like Patreon, you don't have to put things behind a paywall anymore. And therefore, you can put product out there for free, essentially, and people are able to pay you what they find it valued at. If they're finding value in it, especially if they're like, they want you to continue releasing whatever product it is that you're releasing, they're more likely to voluntarily, donate however much money to you on a regular basis, because they want you to continue with the product. And it's understood that if I don't have the income to continue the product, then that product is going to end up ending at some point. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Correct.
I was rambling there for a second. You go ahead.
Oh, no, that's great. And one little aspect of Patreon, that Patreon has newer features where you can put content behind the paywall. So you can put audio, video, writings on posts on Patreon that only people who are Patreon subscribers at certain levels can access. So you now even have the ability to do a paywall with no cost of having to build out a specific website. Like, there's very little need for anyone to build a dedicated website the way they used to. I mean, there's some search engine optimization reasons, but for the most part, like, you can just get a Patreon account, a Facebook page, and maybe just like a free WordPress.com blog or Tumblr blog that you point the domain to, and you can function a revenue generating site at, like, again, you basically just be paying for the domain, and the domain is probably like $12 a year. So you basically, that'd be your only cost. And you can just generate revenue from Patreon, have your Facebook page for marketing purposes, and have your WordPress or Tumblr blog as the page that people can access, whether they're on social media or not. And voila. Zero cost.
And another thing that I've noticed, especially with me, at least in the last couple of years, is that I'm less likely to visit a website if that website does not have an app. If it doesn't have an app, I don't usually go to the website because I forget about it. But if that app's sitting there on my phone or on my screen, I see it and I'm like, oh yeah, let me go see what's going on over here.
Yeah, and, I don't even do that anymore. Like literally, it's like basically most of my browsing or interactions on Facebook. So basically, Facebook pages and Facebook profiles and Facebook engagements, like 90% of how I consume and enjoy that, and podcasts. Like basically 90% of the products I find out about are through listening to podcasts.
Right. And it was what was it? Just a couple of weeks ago, I think that part of the problem got taken off of Google Play. Or they quit uploading new episodes. Oh. I haven't gotten a new episode on my Google Play in quite a while, and it's so much more difficult for me to remember to go to Gas Digital and listen to part of the problem. And it's just because my mind is programmed. I go to Google Play, look at my podcast. This is the list of podcasts I have up there. This is what I have to listen to, and part of the problem is no longer up there with the podcasts that are being released. So it's very much when you're looking at marketing, you have to look at those interactions and the way that people are beginning to use the internet and these apps and this, that, and the other in order to keep your audience interested and to find new audiences. You say you do a lot of your most of your interactions are on Facebook. So that tells me that still to this day, Facebook is a good place to be marketing. And it's a much better place to be marketing than, say, Instagram, because the people on Instagram are younger and they're less likely to have money than the people on Facebook.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, every social media network has their strengths and weaknesses. Facebook is probably the most overwhelmingly is the elephant in the room as far as like its ability to reach people. Mm-hmm. Which makes it such a thing to be really tapped into. But yeah, being where the people are at is important. A lot of times people just, are just glad of making a good product. Okay, I'm gonna make a good product and I'm just happy I got it online. But oftentimes you can have the best product in the world, you can have the best marketing message in the world, but if you don't put that where the people are at, then you still fall on deaf ears. And this is something I talk about with like Libertarian candidates all the time, or I try to get through to Libertarian Party candidates all the time, like in the sense that like it's not just the strength of it. It's like, for example, every company thinks they have the best product in the world. And they think, oh, my product should sell itself. It doesn't. No matter how good your product is, it doesn't sell itself. You have to be always willing to get out there and learn how to sell your product better. So as great as Libertarian ideas are and as amazing I think they are, I always have to be working to sell them by applying marketing principles, because at the end of the day, nothing sells itself.
Right. Well, speaking of the social medias, while we're still on that, there's a few out there that aren't as well known, like Minds and Steemit.
Yep.
Do you do any work on Minds and Steemit?
Oh, I'm on everything. So yeah, definitely follow me on Minds and Steemit if you have a profile on either of those for anyone listening. But I also have an account on MeWe. I have, if you go to alexmerced.com, there's a list of all my social media profiles. Mm-hmm. I went through a phase where I just literally went to make a profile on everything I could.
Really?
But those are growing, and I do find at least there's people who I can reach there that I can't reach elsewhere, just because there's a lot of people who have tried to stay away from the Facebook and Instagram, the big networks, due to fears of use of information, stuff like that. So they want to use Mind, Steemit, or MeWe because they feel like their information is safer. So in that case, they're only on there. So it's a much smaller audience, but that audience is growing. Yeah. So it's good to be there early, so that way when that audience gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you already kind of learned how that platform works. So right. I am pretty active on Twitter and Instagram and Steemit and Minds and MeWe. It can be time intensive, but you gotta learn how all the platforms work, so that way you can take advantage of them in the best way that you can. And also, a big thing for me is just also educating other people on what's the best ways to achieve their goals. So I try to be dabbling in everything, so that way I learn stuff and then I can transmit that knowledge to other people.
Mm. Well, I am on Minds. I'm not on Steemit at the moment, but I am on Minds. And one thing that struck me about Minds is the way that it's set up to me, just from because I don't really write much on there, but I go and I look through it, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how people are using it. And it seems to me like it's structured a lot like almost like a open source newspaper. Like people are publishing like very long articles in there, and they're getting paid in cryptocurrency based upon the amount of interactions they have and amount of posts that they make, which I think is really interesting. Have you found it beneficial as of yet, or have you not really gotten it down pat?
I liked Minds a lot better when I was able to. The mobile app allowed me to use my points to boost my posts. I know you can still use the points you get to boost posts, but you have to do it through desktop, I think, because I can't figure out how to do it on mobile in its newer version. So that's reduced the amount of time I use Minds lately. But Steemit also, I have that dynamic where people like posts and you generate cryptocurrency by the people liking it, people sharing your post. And I find that I wish Steemit had an app, but otherwise it doesn't work too bad through the browser. And I've been I like both of them. I like the concept behind both of them, and I do plan on. I do think they have a bright future ahead of them. So I'm definitely looking forward to being more and more engaged on them.
Okay. Well, because the subject came up, I'm gonna see if we can't switch over to cryptocurrency a little bit. You're pretty familiar with cryptocurrency, am I right?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely an enthusiast. I do run a podcast called the Bitcoin Blockchain Crypto Podcast on the topic, which recently had to be rebooted just due to some hosting issues. And then I also have a website, bitcoinblockchaincrypto.com, where I have videos where if anybody isn't as familiar with crypto, it's a great crash course that kind of explains everything in layman's terms, but explains enough of it that you can actually pretty much keep up with some of the top crypto experts and what's going on.
Perfect. So when you're looking at the crypto market, okay, I had Mance Rader on last week. I interviewed him, and we talked a little bit about Bitcoin, about Bitcash, about Zen. And when you're looking at the just plethora of different currencies that are out there, how is somebody supposed to make decisions on these coins? It seems to me like, and this is just my basic understanding, I haven't done a lot of research, and I really need to, and I'm just behind on the entire thing, so I'm going to be tuning into your podcast in order to catch up on all the information I need. It seems to me that Bitcoin, the original Bitcoin, before the split, or what's existent after the split, not the Bitcoin Cash, but the original Bitcoin, it seems to me like it's more of an investment. Like it's more like when you're getting into the stock market, and it's more about growth and this, that, and the other. Where it seems to me, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, and Zen Cash, and even Dash Digital are more currency ready as far as the use to spend today. Am I reading that right?
Bitcoin has some scaling issues that it's addressing, but it does look like those will probably be addressed eventually when Lightning payments. Lightning payments is one of the things that will help address the Bitcoin scaling issues and just some other, but also still has some of the most built-in infrastructure and built-in apps and all this stuff. So Bitcoin has a huge lead as far as just the tools that are there to help you use Bitcoin. So I generally do think in the long run, Bitcoin's still going to be is the one that I feel very confident will be around. And due to the fact that people fork Bitcoin so regularly now, that any good features that a lot of the other coins have will get adopted into some sort of Bitcoin fork down the road. So to me, it always just seems very prudent to hold some Bitcoin, but I do have a little bit of everything else. And I do think especially a lot of the ones you mentioned, Dash, Zen, etc., those are all going to be around. because they all kind of have really built good, dedicated communities and audiences, and people who do accept them. So I don't anticipate Dash going anywhere. I don't anticipate Zencash going anywhere. I don't anticipate Bitcoin Cash going anywhere. I don't anticipate Litecoin going anywhere, or Ethereum going anywhere. Now, some of the other ones that I personally find very interesting are things like Waves. I think it has a bright future ahead of it. I think, Monero is another one that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. I like the idea of sort of a lightweight Monero, which is what Aeon is, AEON. So I do like that one. But also, it's just the general scaling issues of blockchain in general. There are two efforts to sort of address some of the major scaling issues in general, to allow lots of currencies to exist, and for it to all be interoperable and whatnot, and that's Komodo and Lambda. And those two, I think, are really long-term plays, but I think if either one or both of them kind of complete their project to fruition, that'll really make it where basically blockchains are almost creating a blockchain is going to be easy as opening up like a Word document, and then people will be able to like interact with each other's blockchains, and it really kind of opens up the blockchain world to just sort of a useful digital tool for communicating, spending, keeping track of records, etc. So I'm really excited about those two. Although I think Microsoft, with Microsoft Azure, is trying to create enterprise blockchain tools, except I think the people who really like blockchain oftentimes a very open source community. So I think anything Microsoft may do, if it's not open source, probably won't get the adoption within that community that something like a Lambda or a Komodo that will be open source will get. So I do think some of the stuff people within that community are going to trust something that comes from someone within the community than one of the big players that existed before the community existed, kind of thing. So that's sort of my thought process. I go into a lot more detail on this in the videos over there at bitcoinblockchaincrypto.com, because I probably have like 2 or 3 hours worth of me breaking all this down. So that's probably a good high level of it.
Yeah. Is there any... Should people be concerned? Because, like, okay, so a lot of people are using or turning to the cryptocurrencies to get away from the fiat currencies because they're just uncertain about how much longer fiat's going to be able to exist with the way that government has intervened with it and all these bubbles created, and it's just it appears we're right on the edge of another economic shock, to say the least. I've heard it been called a tsunami coming. But so should we be concerned that about what I don't know all the technical terms, if I could speak. I don't know all the technical terms behind it, but it seems to me like I read something the other day that Bitcoin was trying to register with the SEC, and should somebody be concerned about the potential centralizing of a crypto of Bitcoin?
Of Bitcoin, no. Just because you wouldn't be able to now. As far as like, there's a lot of crypto communities have been trying to make sure that they're okay with the SEC. Because here's the thing: if there's a conflict between them and the SEC, then it does create this uncertainty for people to adopt that particular crypto, because they're scared that, hey, the SEC might arrest me and take all my crypto if they're not okay with it. But what the SEC has ruled that anything that's like proof of work, so Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, that those are not considered securities. So they don't have to register with the SEC. They are not regulated by the SEC. They're more of an asset, kind of like gold is an asset, because there's no one necessarily in kind of control of their supply. There's no one who's making money off their issuance. But if you do a smart contract on like Ethereum and sell like an ICO token, that would be like a security, because you are creating something and raising money off of it for a particular project, and that would require registration with the SEC. So, which is again, as much as I'm hesitant always about more regulation from the government, at the end of the day, the current way we do keep track of like legitimate securities versus not legitimate investments is through the SEC, and that's kind of what investors expect, at least for the time being. Ideal world, someone would create their own private registry where they can verify, what's a legit investment versus people who are trying to scam you. And people could go verify, what makes sense from that private registry. But that is yet to be formed. I think it will be, because there's a demand for it. People do get scared in the crypto markets versus, what's real, what's not. So there's a demand for it. But right now, at least within the U.S., it looks like the SEC is going to be taking that role, which was inevitable. So which is, again, not the end of the world, because it does mean the fact that they're allowing to be played that role, it means they're going to allow the crypto markets to facilitate themselves in the U.S. instead of instead of a worse road where they would try to outright ban it or something like that.
Right.
So in the U.S. there is a home for crypto, and it can develop. And I know a lot of companies who are moving into that space, so that way they can be the place where if you want to issue crypto assets in the U.S., they're the company who's good with all the compliance rules and all that stuff. And a lot of those companies have to register as broker-dealers, so their employees have to be licensed, which means they generally have to be trained by me. So I've been getting to meet a lot of those people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're coming up on an hour into this, and we'll be wrapping it up shortly. I just had one more question about crypto for you, and then we're gonna let you do your plugs, and we'll get rolling. When it comes to if like, let's say there's somebody out there that's saying, okay, there is something happening in the economy. Let's just say me, for instance. I recognize that the economy, we're in bad shape economically, and that we're right on the precipice of something bad happening. So if I wanted to start getting involved in cryptocurrency, what would be the first steps that you would advise me to take?
The first thing I would say is that understand that investing in cryptocurrency is speculative and very risky. If you want to speculate and you want to see how it goes, I think cryptocurrency is something that people should at least partially be involved in. And I think and I'm very bullish on cryptocurrencies in the long run. But this isn't where you put your life savings. This isn't where you're going to protect yourself from the oncoming recession. Because again, maybe there might be one or two cryptocurrencies or a few cryptocurrencies that are resilient when that time comes, but it's not obvious which ones they will be. And so there's always the risk that you put yourself in the one place that goes down. So never put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to crypto, and always never put money that you can't afford to lose in crypto. But always the easiest place to start is, buying the big, like the three household names, which is Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. That's always a good place to start. That kind of gives you the wiggle room to participate in other exchanges and buy other cryptos. But you want to diversify. If there is another crisis, which inevitably there will be, you really want to be well diversified, and you're really going to want to have. You're going to want to maintain the. It's tricky. I mean, people will say gold, but that's also something you don't want to put all your money there either. You want to have your money diversified across all these different types of asset classes, and even a portion of it in cash, because when it does fall, stocks will fall. There'll be a buying opportunity. If I kept more of my money in cash back in 2007, 2008, and been able to buy more stocks in 2009, 2010, I'd be a much happier person right now. Or if I even just bought Bitcoin at the time, because chances are a lot of the cryptos will go down as well, and there'll be a buying opportunity. So having your money maybe diversified over lots of different things is never a bad idea. But at the end of the day, you should always talk to a financial planner. I like a financial planner just because what you should do is always depending on what your goals are and what your risk tolerance is and your time horizon is, and you're going to want someone who's been trained in that. I mean, I train people for that. I'm not currently licensed, so I can't make specific recommendations. But at the end of the day, you want someone who's going to help assess your specific situation to give you recommendations that are specific to your situation.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. That's very good advice as far as being cautious, but being cautiously optimistic at the same time. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up there, man. I really appreciate your time. Let's plug anything, because we know everybody listening wants to find you now. They want to know who Alex Merced is.
The easiest thing to do is just go over there to alexmerced.com. At alexmerced.com, you'll find everything that I do, and all my podcasts, all the stuff about the Libertarian Party, etc. Also like my pages on Facebook. There's several of them, so just go down, start liking them all. Just look at my name. But also, if you're not involved with the Libertarian Party, I highly suggest, give us a shot. Okay, get a membership. There's, you can always change your mind later, but get involved with us. All I ask people is right now, give us 2 years. Give us the next 2 years to show you what we got, to show you how our growth is, and to show you what we believe. And I think after 2 years, I think people will stick around even longer. But all I ask is give us a chance, get a membership, get the card, get the little newspaper that we deliver out, and learn more about us.
Yeah, you sold me between you, Mance Raider, and Larry Sharp on the Rubin Report. I was like, all right, man, I got to do this. So I joined the Libertarian Party yesterday. So, all right, yeah, man, I'm glad to be part of the family. I think we're going to find out.
As you see, we got some star power now.
Yeah,
I think we got some really amazing things going on the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen a movement that's fired up since Ron Paul. I know that's hard to believe with all the Obama love and the Trump love, but I don't think I've seen this kind of momentum, this kind of excitement since Ron Paul. And I could have just missed the wave of Obama. And nothing about the Trump run surprised me. I called that a year ahead of time. I was like, yeah, he's going to win, whatever. All right, everybody.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, thank everybody for listening. This has been Stranger Encounters. That was Alex Merced. I'm Tommy Salmons. Late.
Tearing deep within my skin, faded eyes can't see true evil within me. Broken mirror of my life cuts my soul.